Hello friends and welcome to another video. A fellow composer and friend of mine left a comment a few days ago on one of my videos about the loops and the copyrights that you might have issues with using in your compositions, and that for sync libraries they actually do not recommend that you use any loops. It's a little bit of a gray area again because there's so many companies out there that they make money by selling loops to composers, whether they are with sync libraries or doing royalty-free libraries, or they just call themselves composers full stop. Now, can you make music using these loops? Absolutely. How are you going to use these loops? And all of this ideology that once you submit a music track to a sync library that very clearly says when submitting music, do not submit music that includes samples or loops, then how is the composer going to actually submit music if they're not using certain samples and certain loops? I mean, really, nobody can tell now. I'm not saying here that you have to break the rules, but let's be realistic here. Some libraries and some composers only compose when they use samples and loops. And I put samples and loops in the same category because it's the same thing. All right? Once you purchase a sample from a company, whether that's Spitfire's Audio, or you go to another company who just specializes in loops and samples, and you just grab that and you just press with one key a certain music part, that's a sample, and it has a beginning and an end. And that, in theory, is a loop. Whether you loop that or not is another story. Okay? What I do here, and what I'd like to show people, is that you can make music using these free samples and free loops that come with your DAW, or even with Spitfire's Audio sample libraries. Okay? I have composed professional sounding music tracks with just Labs free sample range in Spitfire's Audio. You can go and check that out. You know, it's free of charge. This sample sounds amazing. Now, you're not going to compose just using those samples and that's that. There's no fun in it, right? The fun part of making music is combining what I like to call the MIDI and all of the sequences, all the fake instruments, samples, and loops with your own sound. So in my case, because I play a real instrument, I play the guitar, I like to use drum loops. I like to use tambourines. I mean, there's no way that you can use a tambourine that is a loop and you submit your music track to a sync library and they're going to say like, that's a loop. All right? Now, can you grab a tambourine, a microphone, right, and put it in front of a microphone and go like that? Absolutely. Does that make you a better composer? No. Okay, and I think there was a commercial out there at one point with some famous DJ, Diplo or whatever. I'm terrible with DJs because I'm not in that scene.
What's up guys, this is Diplo here. Today I wanted to show you how I made my sounds for my sounds.com pack. I thought using loops was cheating, so I programmed my own samples. I then thought using samples was cheating, so I recorded real drums. I then thought programming was cheating, so I learned to play drums for real. I then thought using pre-made drumsticks was cheating, so I started making my own. I then thought using a pre-grown tree was cheating, so I planted a few in my yard. But then I had the realization, it's not how you make the sounds, it's what you do with them.
But he was talking about this, about samples and the whole philosophy about DJs. And obviously DJs that's another conversation altogether, right? People believe that DJs are not real musicians. But he was talking about samples, okay? Because if you're a DJ, or if you're making hip hop for that matter, you rely heavily on samples and loops, especially if you're a composer that does hip hop, right? Now, if I'm submitting music to a sync library that happens to be exclusive, and they have all of these terms like, oh, we don't want royalty-free music, which is most of them are nonsense. I've seen sync libraries, really high-end sync licensing libraries, and you can go and check it out for yourself. I invite you right now to go and check out different sync libraries, listen to the music, and tell me if the quality is as good as what you hear in Artlist or Motion Array. Okay? Because I've seen sync libraries, I've been there, I've checked the music because that's what they recommend. Listen to our catalog so you know what to submit to us. I listen to it and I say like, that's proper crap. I mean, I've heard music tracks in Motion Array that sound better than that. and they call themselves a sync high-end library, right? Nowadays, royalty-free library music is so high, the standard is so high that you can say that is equally, if not better, than sync libraries. A lot of composers here that are only from the sync library camp, and they refuse to sell their music on Pond 5 or Motion Array, just out of pride, I guess. They will argue that that's not the case, but I invite you to listen to this type of music, okay? So the quality nowadays is so good that it's impossible to say that you cannot use this or use that. You have to use your own common sense. I will never compose a music track just using loops and then say that that's my composition. I have to do something creative with it, okay? Obviously, we're going to use certain tools that are available to us. But all of you guys out there that like to spend a lot of money on samples and can't wait to get the latest sample library with all of this violin thrills and passages, that arguably that's as well a loop, okay? If you like to compose cinematic music and you have all of these samples that you press one key like that, and you have this passage of violins, right? With all of this technology that they use in order to record that. And that's okay, because it's not a real person playing it, but somehow it's a sample, right? A library, a sync library, if they say that you cannot upload this type of music, then what are we doing here? So you're telling me that you can only go to a real orchestra and grab some violinist and record them yourself through a microphone and then use that in your composition in order to submit to a sync library? That's bullshit. Okay? The tools are there for us to make music in order to submit this music to sync libraries or to royalty-free libraries. To me nowadays, it's the same thing. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a different way of making money with your music. Sync libraries work in a different way than royalty-free libraries do. Some things you can do, obviously, with having your music on royalty-free libraries. For example, your music will be available for a bigger range of creators, for example, YouTubers and whatnot. And you can make sales. You can license your music on a regular basis. With sync libraries, it's different. You were looking to make business in a different way, an upfront sync fee, get money through your PROs and whatnot. But when it comes down to this thing that, I only use real people playing in my composition, it's nonsense. Nobody does that, especially nowadays that we have so many samples in our computers and loops. And, again, it's a starting point for the composition. I use samples and loops all the time on my compositions, just as a starting point, as a way of creating my own thing. In fact, when you go to different royalty-free libraries like Audio Jungle and all of these libraries, it says, click this box or whatever, that it says that you have the clearance to use the samples that you're using that are not yours. Okay? They understand that people and composers are using samples that they're not their own composition. They're not their own sounds, right? So you have to click that box, because once you buy a library or a sample or a loop from Spitfire's Audio, whatever other companies are out there selling samples, they have the clearance. They said they're royalty free in order for you to use them in your composition so you can monetize your music. Otherwise, what are we doing here? All right? But there's a lot of discussion about this, about the fact that sync libraries work in a different way. When it comes down to exclusivity, by the way, that's another story, and I'm going to probably do another video about that. A lot of libraries are talking about, we only expect your music to be exclusive, and the reality is that composer does not have that music exclusive with that library. I have done the work, by the way. I have done my research, and I have seen composers who have music who apparently is exclusive on one library, and I see it in another library, the same track, okay, with a different name. I've seen other composers, experienced composers, talk about this. It's a little bit of a gray area. And I'm not saying here that you need to break the law or break the rules or do something that is not in alignment with your values as a person and as a composer. I'm just saying here that some things are the way they are. Now, I will never do that. Okay? I will never grab an exclusive track that I have with one library and sell it in another exclusive library, or vice versa, okay? Or have an exclusive track with one library, but that track happens to be non-exclusive. There's libraries that actually change their mind along the way. Have you heard about that? They are non-exclusive, and then after a while they say, like, you know what, we're now exclusive. And these libraries are usually those who want to separate themselves as well from royalty-free libraries. It's a terrible deal for composers because at times, yes, the fees could be better for us because now we're exclusive, but at the same time, you know, I join a particular library because I like the idea that it's non-exclusive. And non-exclusivity is nothing more than the ability or the freedom of me earning money with this library, plus this one, plus that one, plus this one, and all of that. You know, the idea of composing one track and having them locked in one library in the hopes that I get a sync fee or it gets a placement sometime in the future, it's a risky one. You have to really think about it. I'm not saying that you're not going to be able to make money, but I have plenty of stories of some music tracks that I have composed for sync libraries who happen to be exclusive that nothing happened. And to me, it was a waste of time, you know? And I had to grab those tracks after the contract was over and say, you know what, I'm going to put this back online so I can create something. Because at the end of the day, I'm in the business of making money with my music. All right? I hope this video finds you well, my friend. Thank you so much for all the love and support. Don't forget to get your guide, link in the description, if you want to earn money with your music in 2024 and beyond. Thank you so much for all the love and support. I'll see you in another video, my friend.